John, yeah, John, do you want to pray for us?
Yeah, I can pray.
Okay.
Dear Lord, thank you for our time together. And I pray that you um, help us to learn and show us what you would have for us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay. Next slide, Linda. Mm, welcome, and I guess I didn't scare you out for me last week. Next, last week was a lot of the other E. We just think we anytime was good. God created us in its image and dark, and we dark about what image means is able with disability is involved. Then we move to the file. We said that file is the mood building up the valuable, the good, going, Asia, and is not happy to want this one visit and there's disability is without of this would visit. Yes, then get guys disability, but it also helps put us back to God and what we meant to be. Finally, I went over some of the windows that helps us understand disability and its connected to the world. Next, any thoughts or questions about the review or anything that came up for you during the week?
I really appreciated the focus on Exodus 4 last week and Moses's concern about his speech ability. Then enjoyed reading that this week in a common word and just kind of seeing that from a good perspective. And I've been continuing to think about that as I've been reading about Moses and his hesitations and just my own hesitations about whether, I'm the right person for God to use.
Okay. Thanks.
Hi. I'm joining from the Denver side of the state. I go to Wellspring and I'm on staff in the children's ministry. So just in a different area from you guys within our diocese. but I'm really glad to be here, and was really excited when I found out that you guys were hosting this. Is there a way that I can get the recording of the teaching from last week, since I missed the last one?
Yes, we will make it available shortly. We'll email
Okay.
out everybody who has registered for this. So
Great, thank you. I look forward to catching up.
Good. Oh, next slide. I got a mess up last week when I was talking to Ken. Actually, it got reception. You basically didn't know that I meant. And if you think about it, it deserves its own act because it is the just death and with the vaccine and all that the other around that I'm looking at those thick books right now. They go into detail about how this works, and as we talked about last week, there may be different ways to present and accept grace when you have a disability. Next, okay, do not recognize the X, 4 and 5 with the majority of time focusing on X 4 when I got the living, but you can cut it as well. Might be better. I've invited a couple of people to start there to ease and over it there will be more conversation tonight to get us started. Your ears into it that news happened a couple of weeks ago. Next, I was with the knock at the door. The lady echoed waited a couple of minutes while I found the remote to open the door. That's an important point because it told me that they had something important to say. When I opened the door, the eggs vulgarity saying, oh, that's name was first was with the lake. When I said God wasn't the vision got weird. Next, was the woman dude. I don't God was a guy, maybe my dad. Next, she told me that she wanted to talk with Kathy about new policies and savings of utilities. Okay, fine. Then tell me, give me the spiel of the hour. I take on the utilities bill. She said she would go back when Gary got home. My radar went up. They understand that I am the man of the house and perfectly able to make these decisions. How dark Diego came out following by our cat. The lady asked for the names and understood them perfectly. We had a little small talk and next. When I got the I didn't under the pictures. Oh well, when I closed the door and thought about what has happened, I wondered, did they understand who I was? That I was the man of the hours who did they assume that I could think for myself and the guy must have been my God, my keeper. If he had seen what I was working on, to eat the PowerPoint from last week, what would she say next? It also say, but I get it all the time. Maybe it is a little arrogant, but I wanted to ask, oh, the fluid in the robots, do you have the degrees and about the doubt the thought can do a good deal it a good is for do you even know what I could see it means? It's probably wonderful for me to think this way, but don't assume that I am less than just because I'm in a wheelchair and talk funny. I might just start lecturing on it's for something. Next, you can read my book. What is that? Yeah, my name is Tait. But more up to is and about how I live. I wrote the book, but there's purpose, or at least for readers like you. And yet the book is at the pointers, and I do it is on, and I will freestyle the more stories as we go on tonight. So, Mark, do you want to know what ecodisease means? What?
Your joke cracked.
I won't even pretend to say I know. I won't even pretend to say I know what exegete means. Tate, you're the expert in that area, man.
Hey, Gabby, do you know what ecodisease means?
I'm here.
It basically means to say what the original text means. There you are. They did them, Gavin. So, so now it's questions and discussions. You can talk about anything, Gavin, Kelly, anybody.
Hey Tate, I'm gonna have to drop off in a minute to reboot my system. I keep dropping off of the call, and I think I need to reset my router. So I'll be back in a little bit.
Thanks for
Okay.
We can talk if that is helpful.
Go for it, quick, Gav.
Got it. Yeah. Hello, I'm Kevin. I'm sorry. I woke up today feeling like a little vertigo-y and I'm still getting over it. So if I sound a little off, that's why. But it's so good to see you all. So many. Linda, hello. Brittany, hello. Hey, Kelly, great, like familiar faces. So lovely to see you all. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Kevin Burns. I originate from Colorado. I live in the Seattle area now, so shout out to the Pacific Northwest and my people in Denver and Colorado Springs. So quick little overview. Thanks so much for asking me to just share a little bit. I'll keep it real quick. But I have an interesting disability because sometimes I have a disability and sometimes I don't have a disability. So that probably sounds weird. Some of you have seen my disability at its, and I mean, essentially, it's pretty intense at times. The reason I live in the Pacific Northwest is because I have a brain disorder, and my brain disorder symptoms are triggered by climate, altitude, weather, all sorts of weird stuff. That's just some of like those. That's one big category of stuff that triggers my brain disorder. There are other things, but that's one of the main things. And I found out pretty quickly after being diagnosed with my brain disorder that I have to be in cool, cloudy, rainy, consistent places. And my wife and I 2 years ago, kind of randomly, not randomly, but very much in 3 weeks, left everything in Colorado for a chance to just see if moving to the Northwest would change my symptoms and improve my life at all. And since moving here, I've had 0 neurological symptoms at all. So I now live a 100% normal life, as you would say. I now have a job teaching 8th grade Christian studies at a school. I love it. Best job in the world. We bought a house this summer, something that was never possible before. So just really cool stuff happening. Brittany, because I know you're from here, we bought a house in Duval. So I don't know if you know Duval, but we love it. Yeah, so my story is I was perfectly healthy. And then when I was 20, one day stood up out of a chair and collapsed. And for the next 6 years, I slowly lost the ability to walk, to speak well, to use my arms, to like pretty much live independently at all. And my brain disorder mimics CP and Parkinson's, and at its worst can just be completely crippling. So it is weird because sometimes when I talk on this subject, I feel like an imposter because like right now, if you would see me, you would never know. People don't actually believe me oftentimes when I tell them that the reason I moved here was because I have a brain disorder. But those of you who have seen me in Colorado absolutely know why I moved. But yeah, I got diagnosed at 20 and like completely lost the ability to do anything by myself. My wife kind of became my caretaker. But Tait, as you were talking about this situation that happened a couple of weeks ago with somebody just like assuming that you didn't know or like couldn't talk or comprehend anything that was going on, like that happened to me all the time. And it was really interesting to just reflect back on that. And I remember realizing, wow, like this person thinks I don't know what they're saying. And I can't even move fast enough to say, like, no, I don't. Like, I understand what you're talking about. So yeah, I mean, I don't think a lot about my disability anymore, but if I got on a plane and flew to Colorado, which I have done since moving here, I will stop walking in 10 minutes. So it's a pretty quick thing that comes on and all that stuff. But yeah, I wish I haven't seen step 1 or talk 1 yet. So I wish I could tie in stuff that we've been talking about, but if anybody has any questions from last week or curious my thoughts on disability, anything, I'm ordained, I'm a deacon I was ordained at IAC a couple of years ago. I love talking theology, and I love how Tait is always questioning and asking what's the best way to love those who have a disability in the church. He's always challenging me with really good questions on that. But yeah, that's a real quick overview of my disability story. If you have any specific questions, I would love to talk or answer those. So yeah.
If anybody wants to ask the questions to Kevin, you can do it now or later if he's still on.
There's no pressure to ask
No
questions.
pressure to ask. I just don't want to jump into my story before people have a chance to.
I'll ask a question to tie it into last week. One thing we talked about was just how God can use disabilities to display his glory or to bring about the works that he has planned. And just curious if you have any experiences to share there, how you've seen God work through that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it took me a while to come to a place of being okay with the fact that I had a brain disorder. That was, I mean, it's specifically after moving here, and my brain disorder will come on in minutes. So I will be perfectly fine. Like in Colorado, I could be fine, and then 5 minutes later, can't talk, can't move my arms, can't move my legs, like really quick things. And so moving here, and then literally everything just after 6 years, it all being gone, was the strangest feeling. And it made me very angry of like, why did that happen? What was the purpose of that? Because it felt so like, really, like that's, I lost 6 years of my life. I couldn't move for 6 years. And like, now everything's fine because I moved. And so it took me like a lot of time to work through what God was doing and the ways that, because I mean, I would say the biggest gift that we had in Colorado Springs was our church community. And I was able to connect with people that I had never, and probably would have never been able to connect with ever, especially people who were older and going through very similar situations of we're losing independence and we're losing control of our lives. And we're, you know, there are moments when you're like, we say God is in control, but I feel like my whole life is out of control right now. But I really think one of the closest places that I felt to God was when I was in my wheelchair. Like the closeness of truly having no reliance on my own physical strength for anything, really needing my wife to actually let go of the pride that says I have to do it. And letting her help me. Yeah, obviously I'd still try, but letting her help me. And I feel like I learned God's grace for us and our own helplessness, and the way that Jesus reaches out and meets us. But I mean, I think I have come to a place of being really thankful that I have, and it feels weird to say I have a disability because like I don't right now. But to like that I do have a disability because of the way it helped me understand God, but also more importantly, like the way it helped me understand other people and really connect with them and say like, hey, like God is here with us. God is in the midst of this. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I don't know if that was super clear or deep. And the other thing, yeah, Tait and I have talked about this too, of just like, I remember being really frustrated when people would actually pray for me when I had my disability. Because sometimes I was so sick of feeling like somebody's project to fix. And when the prayers wouldn't work, it just felt like one, why isn't God healing me? Is it my fault? Is something going on? And two, like, why am I not enough right now as I am? As much as I wanted it to be gone too, at some point you got to accept like this is what it is. You know, this is where I'm at. And so just like, yeah, for me, prayer became something that was really difficult to receive. And God did a lot of work on me with that. But just like, I wanted people to pray for me to experience God where I was more than I wanted an answer, like a healing. So it just general tips for talking with people with disabilities. And Tait and I talked a little bit about that. I was honored when people would pray for me. But when it turned into like I was the spectacle and it wouldn't work, like it was just embarrassing and humiliating. So I always appreciated the prayers of like that I would experience God's closeness in the midst of the suffering. So yeah, thanks, Brittany.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, and Kelly, I'd love to hear from you too about like how this applies to your story that you'll tell us. What was the most helpful thing that your church community did do? Like, what was something that was very helpful? Like you said, like praying, like it was almost a little bit over highlighted for you, and it kind of like you didn't feel supported maybe in every way that you wanted. So was there anything that your church community did that was so spot on where you felt truly cared for, but also just loved as the way that you are?
Bree, I'm sorry, is this for me or was this for Kelly?
But for you, and then if Kelly wants to loop it into her story as well, because I have the question for both of you.
And Bree, shout out to Wellspring. Love Wellspring.
Yeah, I know. We love Wellspring.
Wellspring was our church when we were at Denver Seminary. So
Oh, really?
And then we went to I. Yeah, honestly, I think this speaks volume. I think Tait would probably agree with this, but like, I think being at IAC in Colorado Springs, I loved that it didn't matter that I had a disability. Like that was not a reason for me not to be able to serve, or that wasn't a reason that I couldn't give. I mean, there were days when I was shaking holding the communion cup. Like Amy was holding it with me, and I'm like, this is, could barely hold the chalice. But having a place to actually lead and to get to share and to be a part of ministries. And there were days when I'd show up to my ministry groups that I was leading and be totally fine. And there were days that I couldn't speak properly and had to have somebody else lead it with me, but I still had the chance to participate. I never felt like my disability was something that it was like, no, so what? Like, you want to serve, like serve, here, let me find a channel for you to serve. So, I mean, that was my experience. And really super helpful. I think just having avenues for the disabled to actually serve and not look for excuses why they can't serve, but like actually find reasons why they can. Because I think it often surprised people sometimes to see me or Tait doing stuff during the service. And that's always fun to give them a little shock, right? Like, hey, I do know what's up. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and just share my story first. My story is a little different because it involves a lot of hidden disabilities that I didn't realize I had when I was growing up. Excuse me. Yeah. Might get emotional. I grew up in a church home. My parents are in Christian ministry. So God and church was always a big part of my life. But, being a girl in the 80s with undiagnosed ADHD was a very interesting place to be. And, I just felt very isolated in that particular situation just because kids can be mean and whatever. But I felt, I was accepted into, I did church, youth group, youth choir trips and stuff like that. But it was just, my ADHD actually comes with a memory issue, which might have been a godsend because I don't remember a lot of that time of my life. But I always knew God was with me. And then, long story short, I moved after I went to college. I actually graduated college in Mississippi State University, and then went home for 6 years, and then to Orlando, and then on out here where my sister lives in Denver, and near Wellspring actually, and but she doesn't go to church there. And so I moved out here, and I moved out here 2 years after I was finally accepted my diagnosis of ADHD. As a 33-year-old, I had just turned 33. And so, I was still, when I first moved here, I was still very reliant on my parents for a lot. That we have a codependent relationship that was really bad at that time. And, and it was interesting to try to find a church home. I definitely migrated toward a church that was like the church I grew up in terms of theology and stuff. And it was great. I was, I wasn't open about my disability because I didn't totally understand it. So, but so I was accepted into that church as an adult, and and my passion has always been to work with children, and 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 I realized as I was growing up, I have that heart for children with people with disabilities. I worked because of my undiagnosed issues. I worked when I was younger. I interact with old people really well, and younger people younger than me really well. But I always had that struggle for peer-to-peer relationships, and so I did things in that church, my first church I went to here, and long story short, ended up leaving that church for a non-disability reason, and met Tait. And then I, because I was looking for a new church and was, starting my relationship with Tait. Sorry. I started going to IAC, and I was very impressed with IAC and how they incorporated Tait into the church body and service body and stuff. And so I so yeah, so I've been attending with him for about 10 years. Is that right, Tait? Nod your head. And I've hit some struggles in the last couple of years before, like the year before COVID, with things at IAC. And let me just preface all this that I'm about to say is I think the world of IAC. I love IAC. I love what they're doing for families. I'm challenged by some of the focus they've decided to put on certain populations. And so, COVID is actually giving me a chance to step back and just, and do church in a different way. And it's not bad. And I don't say any of the negative stuff in my story to poo-poo on IAC. God has them, in the world for a reason. And so yeah, you asked that question, Bree, and it's like, well, yeah, there's just been some struggles that I've had because I'm coming to find out I'm just turned 50. So I've been with my diagnosis for almost for 16 and a half years. And I have learned more about myself, and that, God has revealed to me more about how he's made me. And I actually have a general anxiety disorder diagnosis, and I live with chronic depression. Those are things you don't see. And, with the growth of churches, particularly IAC, it's hard to, and then not being a family with kids. We don't have any two-legged kids, because we do color animals our kids. It's been hard to get into places where you can make relationships. I can build relationships with people and get to know them, and build the relationship of trust. And I always have to remind myself that the individual that I'm talking to has the best for me in mind. It's really easy for me to go to the negative in different situations because that's my default. And so I hope one day, whether it be to go back to IAC or God brings us to a different church relationship, that I can be in a place where I get to invest in other people, and other people can invest their time and efforts into me. And so, yeah, so it's definitely been an interesting journey. And yeah, so and it is a journey. And I had a friend, she just went to heaven last year, but older friend of mine. I actually knew her when I was growing up, and we've still maintained a friendship. And she, you know, asked me point blank once if I had ever prayed for healing. And it's like, yeah, I have. But God told me that he made me the way he made me in order to reach out and show his love to people dealing with the same thing, whether it be with their children with the ADHD diagnosis, or an adult dealing with ADHD as an adult, or all the other issues that I deal with. You know, it's like, you know, I've realized that, yes, God has ordained my disability to help bring other people to him. So, so I have to keep reminding myself of that, and that, you know, that that's important to me. And, you know, so thanks.
Thank you for sharing, Kelly. What, as you said, like you're hoping for a space where you could invest in others and that you could also be invested in, what would that look like for you to be invested in a way that you feel really supported and seen by your community? Would that be like, would a small group kind of venue like be ideal, like, or something within that of like maybe others who have similar struggles, or like, is there anything that you've kind of walked away saying like you wish you had in the church community?
Yeah, just, I guess, the time and space to get to know people, you know, where I can get to know them, they get to know me. And if I do something that bothers them or whatever, they have the freedom to come to me and say, hey, this bothered me. Can we, you know, talk and stuff? And so, you know, and just having the open relationships. We've had when I first met Tait, we were in a couple of different groups together, and Tait was very well accepted into small groups. But with his physical disabilities, with his wheelchair, and we live in downtown Colorado Springs, so every house is made different with the different amount of steps, and you know, and just, so it's interesting because I'm also his caregiver, so I go mama bear on any situation that I feel like is out of sorts for him, and you know, won't keep him safe. So it's kind of like things that will make me feel better, but I also want to keep him safe. So it's kind of like, how do you make that work? And you know, and in every situation and every person you deal with is an individual, and they come to a relationship bringing individual challenges, you know, because I could have somebody that has the same exact issues with ADHD, depression, you know, anxiety, you know, different things like that, but they're going to come at it from a different perspective because of their background or their, you know, their living situation or their work situation. So, you know, yeah, so it just depends on the person's individual stuff. So
Thank you.
Hey, Kevin, a question for you. Have you seen a normal is since you've been using it to and what have they said?
Kevin left.
Okay,
He put it in the chat. So
okay, I will ask him later.
yep.
So, Mark, did you get the things to read for me?
Yeah, Tate, I did, and let me pull it up here. So Tate put some material in the chat that comes from part of his book, but it wouldn't all fit in the chat. So I'm just going to read the whole excerpt for you, the first part of which you'll have in the chat if you want to follow along. Tate says, "What is healing for me? Healing by definition means something is wrong and needs fixing. Disability does not necessarily mean something needs fixing. When having a cold, I need healing. When I have had pain in my arms because of pinched nerves in my neck, I needed healing. But just because I can't walk doesn't mean I need healing. I've had many people pray for my healing because they assume my life must be horrible because of having to use a wheelchair. This is not how God designed me, they say, and I need to be prayed for to rescue my circumstance or to reverse my circumstances. Maybe it's because I've sinned. If only I'd received Jesus, my life would be better. They're well-meaning, and I'm sure they take John 14:12-14 to heart when Jesus says, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, because I'm going to the Father, and I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. You may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it. I used to get upset when people laid hands on me to pray for healing. After all, what do they expect will happen? Me rising from the chair to walk? I hadn't had someone for a long time say that they were praying for my healing until recently, when a lady said she'd pray for me in the middle of a store. All my theology and rush to judgment came back, and I wanted to scream. How dare she think my life was horrible just because I use a wheelchair? Then I thought about it. Am I the one judging? What if when she prayed for healing, the Lord took it to mean something else? What if the answer to her prayer was the healing of a relationship or some sin in my life? What if it wasn't about my body at all? We all have areas in our lives that need healing. What if instead of limiting our prayers to physical healing, we prayed for each other anyway, understanding God knows what we need, whether healing from sickness, a relationship, or sin? Maybe my disability was just a reminder to pray. I'm okay with this. What an honor to be a visual reminder for others to pray.
Hey, anybody else, people, we move on to the more medical information.
Yeah, that was pretty profound, Tate. Well said there, man.
Thanks. Next item, the ear is the more medical stuff that I have written about over the years. I have heard many people over the years who tell me something like this. That I see the amount, but I feel so inadequate when I speak to you. What can you, what can I do about this? And all I can say is to go for it. Take the risk. It is like anything else. We want things to be perfect. We ate very dumb. But what is the old saying? The only dumb question is the one that is not asked. Maybe you have this mark interact with me and wondered how he does it. Remember Mark was renewable at one point. You take that. I don't know what the risk. Yes. And I think videos have died in your normal voice. If you are talking to somebody in a wheelchair, please do not get on his eye level. Or if you are like Peggy, help me wake up my wheelchair. But the thing is, don't take over them. It's okay to take the hand. It, we will make it work. And a smile goes in own ways.
Hey, can I ask?
Next.
Can I?
Yeah.
I have been in I have some compulsive behaviors. One is overeating and one is overspending, and I'm in a 12-step program, and I'm for my overeating, compulsive overeating, and I have learned that it is okay to make a mistake because that is how you learn. You know, Tate talked about Mark having such great interactions with him, and even me. I mean, so if you make a mistake, it's a mistake. You learn from it, and and I watch Tate work with interact with people, and if worse comes to worse, he always has he traditionally always has his iPad with him. And we will make sure he has his iPad with him when we go back to in-person church, where he can type it out, or you can come and get me or somebody, that you might know that knows him, that knows his accent a little bit better. That's what I call his speech impediment. But you can't learn somebody without making mistakes. And, so, I know for me, it on the receiving end of that is just, I am excited when somebody shows genuine interest in me. I'm not looking at them and saying, oh, they made a mistake because they said the wrong word or whatever. I'm going to enjoy getting genuine interest in me. And I think Tate is agreeing because he has a big grin on his face.
Yeah.
So if it's in your heart to interact with somebody with a disability, regardless if it's visual, seen or unseen, follow your heart, follow your God's prompting, and he will redeem whatever happens. So
Is there somebody on Wonder we see next side?
I can.
Okay.
So this question is twofold, and it says, how much help does someone with a disability need? Will they need to be taken care of while at my church? Many people with disabilities are self-sufficient. While it may look as if they are struggling and need help, many times that is just how they do things. They are used to it, so don't think they need help. Always ask before providing assistance. Usually someone who needs a lot of assistance will provide his or her own helper.
Okay. Next time. Is it okay to ask someone about your disability? Where you guys did answer? In neighborhood get to say, hey, what is wrong with you? However, many people with disabilities are not only really, but equal to the life with you. The more you know about somebody, the more you are able to understand and appropriate help next. So I think the break and questions about disability educate
I'd like to
us.
say something, Tate. That is just the tip of the iceberg on etiquette for different, that's kind of like an overview. Tate has done a different presentation that goes more in depth on how it might be more appropriate to treat the specific major disabilities like wheelchair users, visually blind and visually impaired, and the deaf, people with service dogs. We have that information that we can provide. So if anybody wants that, Tate's email is at the end of the presentation tonight. You can email us that and we can share that with you. So, but if you have any questions, anything that you want to ask that we could possibly,
And I have a few more things.
yeah, it's not the end of the presentation tonight.
Well, later.
Go ahead, Tate.
Tate, you said that you're working on a third degree. I'm curious what you're working on.
Yeah, I just got into Asbury Samurai and I got into the theory article master's program. That in the file. But I am already reading some of the books. I'm just that kind of guy.
I can vouch for that. Tate's a total theology nerd. So a master's degree.
As you can see from last week's presentation.
Yeah, but last week's presentation was very approachable. It was, it was bite-sized and it was common sense and applicable. So
that too.
So master's in theology from Asbury.
Yeah. So let's go on to the X5, the final stage of fulfillment and consummation. The stage is disease we know about it is when Jesus comes back that is by the doors and will be in and will be us God's ultimate plan of being heaven and earth together again. We are God and His be creation live in perfect harmony. From a disability progressive revelation to wonderful comes to mind, comes to mind. We are in the he will wipe every eye, every tear back the eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or dying, or disability. For the all all the things have passed away. Next, no other people have fundamental revelation and casual relate them. How much it will be fundamental like and the one alone with my dogs. I still will be. I didn't think no creation this thing. But what about but about says little about it besides what is about the resurrection of the body in verse going to end 15 open no creations and taking going to end verse and that I think that's a purpose because God never avails everything at once. That's why Act 5 is we next the but my personal thought is I don't give much thought about this. I think they don't know how it works and it doesn't help me in the ear and now. Yeah, the old days when I was Jesus to go back and do and there's thing to be over get out of the wheelchair. But then is well if a older thing that I will think about when I get older. Oh boy. There are, but for right now, there are so much things to do and learn about that I have now energy, time or energy to think about something that I don't have control over. And as for each like to say that that's how I have to say about that. If you have something to say,
I would just like to just kind of give my 2 cents into this, because Tate and I talked about it yesterday. And one of the things that gets my anxiety ramped up, thinking too much about the past and too much about the future. And so I try to live my life in the here and now. And so it's not that I don't want what's going to happen in heaven to happen. It's just that if I dwell on that, I don't live my here and now life well. And so yeah, so it's just I think, yeah. So that's why I don't give much thought to heaven being my healing place. I know it will be, but it's like I have to live in the here and now and live with what God has ordained it for my life. And so it makes life interesting, but it and fun. So um that's my 2 cents about that.
Well, speaking on behalf of the so-called able-bodied community, we all have those exact same issues, Kelly and Tate. You know, the things that we struggle with may not be physical or intellectual disabilities, emotional disabilities, but they are emotional burdens, and they are relationship burdens, and they are sins in our past. And we all look forward to when those will be erased, when Christ returns, and we all get a new body and a new life. You know, those promises are for all of us, not just specifically to questions of physical disability.
yeah, I agree with Mark. It just seems like people are, and I have it at this point now time, it seems like people are, I don't know, if forcing me to do look that about it is the right way to say that, but they seem to want, and you know what I mean. I'm not saying there's right.
Let's go on to the questions. Tate.
I can make breaks.
So these are questions that came to Tate throughout the week.
Yeah.
So we'll just, he wrote some responses to them. And if you guys have other questions, did they spur on other questions that you might have? We have about 15 minutes before 8 o'clock. So Linda, can you go to the next slide, please? There you go.
Hey, John, what do we say? Question? Is there no question? This. Okay, I will. You help me. Yeah.
What do you think of disability pride? I know next to nothing. Is it all good, mainly good, mixed, bad? What do you mean by the term, and do others mean something different?
And I said, I got next slide, please. I tend to stay away from this topic because, like it, people who are into it are very simple and very particular. And when you look to the Bible, what the Bible says about pride, it also is found on it, like pride could be with the vow, and that is Proverbs 16:18. My pride comes from who I am on inside and how I live my life. It does not need to shape me because of my disability ways that there is not a complete answer, but there you go. I am an old time being around people like this, and they would probably turn me from my coercion and political beliefs.
I would like to add that there are groups that people who join these pride groups are looking for to be seen and heard, and they choose to do it in large gatherings, and that it's not bad. The gatherings in and of themselves aren't bad. I think from a Christian perspective, you know, being around anybody that feels like they're not being seen or heard, it's just very important to acknowledge them for who they are and where they are in life at the present, you know, and not, you know, we talked about the healing aspect for people with disabilities. There's other issues that use the term pride that, you know, we just got to meet people where they're at. And I think that, you know, I have a hard time with the activist side of pride groups, you know, and that's just because I have a hard time with conflict. You know, I don't do well with conflict. So, but you know, the awareness side of things is important, you know, and you know, we have to meet people where they're at and see them for who God made them to be, and let God work through us to show his love.
Bree, why don't you go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, I have a few general ones. So I work in children's ministry full time. And so I have a few different kids in our children's ministry that have various disabilities. Um, and we have just been feeling so just the Lord has put it on our hearts, obviously, just to care for these kids in the best way and partner with their parents. But it's been a very difficult thing of knowing how to start and where to start. But we've been trying to have meaningful conversations. So from your guys' experience, and for any of you, because I am just stepping into this community and have so much to learn, is there specific things that you guys would like to see that we could do that would help overall our kids feel included and supported and just loved? And I think one thing too that I do struggle with as well, Kelly, you're talking about how you struggled with some of the other kids in your class. And that's one thing that I also struggle with is we have, for example, one little girl that has Down syndrome. And so I struggle with being able to have conversations somewhat quickly in the middle of Sunday school with her classmates about we love Nora and she is part of our class just as much as everybody else. And so also just how to guide that conversation. And I know that that is a lot. And so whatever you guys feel like you would
Because
do.
my passion is. My passion is for children
Yeah.
with disability ministry. And Tait and I
Yeah.
have been to churches. Tait actually works with a Christian ministry called Mephibosheth Ministries, and he's the church relations director. And so one of the things we've done is to go in and do awareness programs for kids. And so let's make sure we've got our contact information intact.
Yeah.
I kind of sensed that when you said you were children's ministry, I'm like, I'm going to get with her after, you know?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I can tell you what IAC does, but because I helped to start that, and then and I've helped to start other ministries, so I have a lot of resources in my brain and stuff. And then so I would love to get with you. I'm not trying to blow your question off right now, but yeah, it is a loaded question, and I have lots of
Yeah.
resources to share with you. So let's definitely get switch contact information.
Yeah, that'd be incredible. Yeah, because that's what I was hoping for is either some general things or if you guys have additional resources of how I can get more submerged into it and just learn more. But thank you so much. It's really
Yeah,
exciting.
and I have some other resources as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Tate.
So, anything else?
Do we want to talk about this next question, or are we just going to be done?
We can talk about it. I think it's a couple upside back, Linda.
This one was just talking about how to relate to
Forward.
well, I'm sorry, I have it in two different places because I pulled it up, PowerPoint up on the computer.
Yeah, there is.
We kind of talked about it earlier about, you know, how to interact with Tait when he's there. And again, you know, the only bad question, the only negative question is the one that isn't asked. You know, and there's, you know, meeting new people for both me and Tait. Tait, can I answer this question?
Yeah, go for it.
You know, you meet new people. You know, you can have hidden disabilities, physical you know, visual disabilities, or just be an introvert or an extrovert. You're gonna get nervous meeting people, and it's just, you know, you just got to ask for God's grace and mercy to just push through it, and know that if you make a mistake, it's nothing but a mistake. It's not gonna hurt anybody. And with Tait, like I said, his speech is is a challenge for me. Sometimes I have to ask him, you know, I live with him and I have to ask him, you know, what are you saying? I like have to have him repeat it. I have to have him use it in a sentence. I have to have him write it on the iPad. It's like, you know, so if, you know, I'm around him all the time and I know his accent pretty well, but there's still times I still have to ask him. So, you know, it happens to the best of us, you know, and it's just, like I said, 10 out of 10, the person receiving it from the other end is just going to be happy that you're attempting to communicate, you know. And as you build that relationship, that comfort level for everybody is going to go up. And so just keep on pressing on and don't feel like, you know, you're hurting feelings or anything.
Can I just make a comment? This is Betty.
Hey, Betty, go ahead.
So brilliant.
So, I mean, it's a theological, but just an observation thing. I've just noticed with my home church in San Diego, the only prayer requests are for physical healing. And I've thought for many years going, is that the most important thing in life? And it seems like it's a theological bent. I wonder, is it contemporary Christianity that comes out of the prosperity and health and wellness? And, you know, we're supposed to be perfect on this earth, and yet that's not biblical. I just find it interesting. And
Yeah.
I have a really good friend who just passed a couple of months ago, and she's been in a wheelchair most of her life, had polio. And we're just actually having her service in Kona this next week. But she would just laugh it off. But so many people coming over to her, you know, with her wheelchair, and then just immediately diving into prayer, whether she wanted it or not. And she's a very gracious person. She's probably all the more so now that she's with Jesus. But anyway, I just find it interesting that we somehow by default go back to the physical healing rather than the whole person, and just even ask, what would you like prayer for, rather than assuming because we see something, then we've got to kind of beeline towards it. I just want to make that comment that I think it's a really common default.
I don't know if it's a failure of theology as much as it is of a mindset. I think it's a mindset. My mom grew up Pentecostal, and I, you know, because in the Bible it talks about that Jesus will heal, and then if you ask, you will receive.
Yes.
But I think that the mindset that Tait and I hold with our disabilities is that God can use anything he wants, which is also in the Bible. So it's like glorify himself. So it's like, so I wouldn't say it's a theological failure as much as it is. It's just that certain denominations, certain ways of believing in Christ and Christianity has been in, that's all they're looking at. And so for people to change their mindset would be a big deal. But I don't know. Does that make sense, Betty?
Yeah. Although I do think it is theological too, with kind of a, Pentecostal, whatever. And we are, so it's that dichotomy of, when are you to go ahead and in faith pray for someone and then watch God do something? It's being sensitive to the Holy Spirit, but it's also being sensitive to the person. And anyway.
Comes from building with the person, not just saying, oh, I saw somebody with a disability, this is how I'm going to pray, you know,
right.
And what
being presumptuous, I think.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I'll never forget the end of Johnny Erickson Tada's movie about her life, when she said, I'd rather be sitting in a wheelchair praising God than healed and doing anything else. Basically.
Yeah, she has such a great attitude. Well, and Kelly, I just wanted to thank you for sharing your story too, just commenting, just you being honest and open. And I'm sorry for your sense of can I use the word displacement at IAC? I'm just sorry.
Thank you.
My sister is on this call and she's being shy and doesn't want to talk, but she's an occupational therapist. And so she said that she also sees that it could be a really great assumption by the world that that is where they feel brokenness, maybe. And when really you're so right, Betty, and like as you guys have said, like so many people have so much more have all their brokenness in their heart. And so yeah, just being sensitive to what they need prayer for, because sometimes they may have really great, as like Tait sees so much purposefulness in his disability and just the great things that the Lord has done through him. Some people probably might also have like come to great terms with that, but then they still need healing in their heart. And so maybe it is also just a great assumption that people make that that would just be something that would be needed all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
From a theoretical point of view is why did Jesus heal people the in the Bible? It was to show that he was God. It wasn't really because people need healing, but that was all great and stuff. But the first purpose of anything that Jesus said did was to bring the new creation to earth. And I think we got to remember that the purpose of Jesus. I was I got to thinking of the man in Acts 3 or 4, where he was late. He was out in front of the temple for 40 years, waiting for healing. Jesus was this real 6 weeks ago. Why didn't Jesus heal him? Then it he had to wait for Peter and Paul 6 weeks later to receive his healing. That is kind of an interesting example. I haven't come up with all of the details about that story, but you kind of need to think about.
Yeah, Tate, you're right about that. I just looked it up. It's Acts 3. The first part of Acts 3 is where that story is.
Yeah.
Good memory. Maybe you need to go to theological school.
My God, I think I will. Thank you for that. Thank you for that suggestion.
You're welcome, man. Happy to be of help.
Anything else before we devote somebody nice?
Just make sure that he and Kelly get one another's information.
Yes, we're working on that right now. Seriously.
Yes, we've exchanged information. So that's great.
Great.
We're going to connect very soon.
Great.
Okay.
Well, Tate, thanks for initiating this. Kelly, thanks for your support. Just speaking for myself, I have appreciated once more the more insight into the depth of the mind and heart of Tait Berge. This guy he's a servant. You're an amazing servant, man. I have a lot of respect and admiration for you. So thanks for this time together.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree. I would echo what Mark said. Both you guys. Yeah, just really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Tate and Kelly. I'll look forward to buying your book, Tate.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been really good.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Thanks.
Okay.